Hi everyone, it's Chrissy from firstdayofhome.com, and today we're making air dry clay gnomes. This is a fun Valentine's Day craft, and if you're into gnomes, this is another great way to create some of your own with their own little personalities. So today I'm also joining a wonderful group of friends who are also YouTubers, and they are going to share other Valentine's Day crafts with you. So be sure to check them out. I'll put the playlist in the description box below. If you're new to my channel, I want to say a quick welcome and thank you for coming over. I hope that you like what you see here and will consider subscribing to my channel by clicking the button below and then ringing the bell so you get notified when I post more videos. Now let's go ahead and get crafting. You'll want to start with a small handful of air dry clay. Now there are lots of different products to choose from. I will link the one that I'm using below in the description box. If your clay is a little bit dry, maybe you've had it for a few months, you'll want to have some water handy so that you can wet the clay and continue molding it and smooth it out with your fingertips. You're going for a cone shape, and this is going to be the body and hat of the gnome. We'll add some little details in just a minute, and I like to give my little hat sort of a crooked feel. This is going to be my male gnome. You can give your gnome, obviously, any kind of character or personality that you like. Next, I'm going to take a small piece of clay and roll it into a ball. This is going to become my little man's nose. I decided his nose was just a little bit too big, so when that happens, you can just pinch off a little piece and roll it again. That looks a little bit better. So to attach the nose, I'm going to use some of my clay tools that I have here. I'm going to make an indention. I also like to wet the tools a little bit just to create a little more friction. This is sometimes called creating slip. So we're going to score by scratching the pieces, the back side of the nose and the indention, and then wet it slightly to create a little bit of slip, which is almost like a glue to get it to adhere. Now, I'm gonna tell you, later on, I discovered this was not secure enough, but we'll come up with a fix for that when it happens. Now I'm going to give my gnome a little bit of a hood over his nose, and so I rolled out a piece of clay and then wet the clay around his nose and placed my little snake of clay over his nose and draping down the side. This is a pretty common technique when making gnomes. All we need to do now is blend it in so that it looks like it's part of the hood. You can use your fingers for this part, of course, or you can try using some clay tools like the one I have here. This is really a nice sculpting tool where it just helps push down the clay around the edges. Unfortunately, my video when I was making his beard did not come out great, but you can see that I'm using this knife edge tool to kind of make the indentions on his beard and give his hood a little more character. I think this guy is pretty close to needing a name. I think he's got such a cute little personality already. So if you have a name for him, drop it in the comments. I'd love to see what you guys come up with. Once you've attached everything and gotten things in place, you may want to just touch up a little bit by smoothing it out with wet fingers. And we're almost done, but since this is a Valentine gnome, we need a little heart for his hood, I think. So I just flattened a piece of clay and smoothed it out with wet fingertips, and now I'm carving a little heart into the clay. It's almost like making a little cookie, and I don't have a cookie cutter this small, so I had to just do it by hand. But you can get creative here and add any other little embellishments like flowers, or you could even use fabric or other craft supplies to decorate your gnome. Again, we're using that scoring technique to try to get the heart to attach more securely. So I scored the back of the heart, I just made scratches and did the same on his hood before attaching the heart. Okay, I think I'm in love. My husband doesn't get the gnome trend, but I'm really into it now. I wasn't at first, I'll admit, but now I'm really hooked. So let's move on to the gnome wife or girlfriend. I went ahead and created another cone. I gave her a slightly different shape to her hood. And I actually think she ended up a little more plump than her counterpart, which is totally fine. I think that's the joy of making gnomes. Each one has a different personality. So I try to make them roughly the same size just so that they would look like a pair. And then I'm going through the same technique of making her nose, trying to match it up roughly to her man's nose size, and then I'm going to add the hood. This time I went all the way around with my snake of clay and then blended it in using the same tools. Here's a view of her back, and you can see the cape or the hood goes all the way down to the ground. I did not add feet or hands to these gnomes, but I think they're just cute as they are. You can decide to add your own and have fun with it, get the kids involved. This is a great craft for teens and tweens. I really think it's fun for all ages. Since this is a lady gnome and I wanted her to look a little different than the man, I decided to create a pair of braids. So I created little mini snakes and then created 3 pieces of it and just braided it like you would hair. And I'll do this on each side and then attach it to the gnome face. When you're attaching things like this, it's always good to try to lift up the other piece and get a flat edge that you can tuck underneath. So I'm going to cut off one end with my knife tool here and then use some of my other tools just to stick it in there. And if you're interested in grabbing a set of tools like this, they're really inexpensive. I'll put a link to one that's similar to what I'm using here. Here's our second braid, and they don't have to be matchy-matchy, but I try to measure them so that they're about the same length. Of course, you could do free-flowing hair, you could do lots of cute things for your female gnome to make her unique. It's also fun to add a few little extra details like some texture to the hair, so I'm using my knife tool to make them look a little more realistic, like real braids would look. What do you think? Have you thought of a name for her yet? I think we need really good names, and I would love to see what you come up with because I'm worried if I say a name, someone might take offense. So give me your best names in the comments. To give her some more girly details, I thought it would be fun to add a little bow on top of her hood. So I'm just making 2 triangle shapes and then I'll join them with a circle. Now I didn't get great video of this part, but you'll see the finished look in just a second. Here she is after drying for about 24 hours. So this is what the clay will look like. It turns white. Here's our man, and remember I said the nose wasn't super secure. Well, here's the fix if that happens. You can either let it finish completely drying and use a glue like E6000, or you can use the very sophisticated toothpick method like I am here. So anything like a little metal piece or the end of a toothpick will help secure the nose by putting part of it in the body and part of it in the nose. Now it's time for my favorite part, which is painting or decorating your gnome. I'm going to go ahead and use a white beard on Mr. Gnome and give him a flesh-colored nose. I started with a pink nose and it was a little too pink, so then I went back through and gave him more of a natural tone. I will link some of the colors below that I used, but I did end up blending some of these colors like the one for his hood. This blue is kind of a combination between a regular blue, black, and white. I don't know why I never seem to mix enough paint the first time and then I have to go back through and try to match the color. Am I the only one that happens to? So I recommend getting as much paint as you think you'll need the first time. And of course, I wanted to decorate his heart with a nice light pink color, and then I'm going to bring some of that color into his girlfriend in a minute. I'll be honest, her nose ended up falling off too, so I gave her a nose job as well and decided to go ahead and give her the same color nose, but I wanted her to be kind of a sandy blonde when it came to her little braids. I also gave her some little lighter highlights, so she's kind of a pampered gnome and has a lot of extra detail. And then I carried that same blush pink from the heart on the other gnome into her hood and just gave it a complete coat of that pink paint, and then we're gonna go add a few little extra details in just a minute. With all of these little details, I do find it helpful to have a couple of brushes with really fine points to get in all of those little grooves. I played around with her body color and I wasn't sure if I liked where I landed, so let me know if you would paint her body a different color because I had a hard time deciding. I did use the same color that I used on the body to add a few little sweet hearts on her hood, and this was pretty tricky. Again, a fine point brush is really helpful here, and I'm just going and kind of making a crisscross to get the heart shape. And then I found out that if you make two little dots and then kind of pull the tail of the heart down, that was also a technique that worked for me. Of course, this is all just for fun. You don't have to do this part. You could do polka dots or nothing at all. I just think it's fun to add these little extra touches. Here you go, learn from my mistakes. I would definitely attach the nose differently next time and maybe just use the toothpick from the get-go. The final piece was just painting her red bow to give her a little pop of color, and I think this really looks nice together, especially with the blue from Mr. Gnome. I think they make a very nice pair. And now she's complete, and my Mr. and Mrs. are ready to live happily ever after. I hope you enjoyed this fun tutorial. Don't forget, there are more videos to check out in the playlist below. I'd also love to see you over on Instagram. I'm at First Day of Home. I'll see you next time.